Once you accept that there is a business case for diversity, increasing diversity will be good for business. If only it was that simple. I'm Dr. Jonathan Ashong Lamptey. I work with organizations to make them inclusive, and I'm on a mission to help 1 million people like you to make your workplace inclusive. Get your pen and paper ready because I'm going to explain why relying on a generic business case for diversity is a huge mistake that can take you away from becoming inclusive. This is the 6th in a series of shows about the 7 biggest mistakes that organizations make on their inclusion journey. 7 predictable errors that I consistently find in organizations. And there's every chance that you're making this mistake and that it's compromising your inclusion efforts. Make sure you check out the other shows in the series because it could make all the difference to your success. The business case for diversity has been established. Companies that have greater diversity are more profitable. Diversity of thought leads to better decision making. I'm not going to go on because you've heard it all before. And if you're a regular listener to the show, you've heard me break down the famous McKinsey report, part 1 and part 2, explaining in detail why statements like the ones I've just made can be misleading. They're misleading because organizations think that believing in a generic business case for diversity is enough to create an inclusive workplace. And I'm going to highlight 3 issues that you should consider. The first issue is the assumption that diversity leads to inclusion. These 2 concepts are related but often confused. Diversity as a management approach recognizes the value in our individual differences. It says that we have differences, we recognize them, and that they're valuable. Inclusion is a systematic business strategy to ensure that everyone reaches their potential. This means we make sure that everyone shares the same advantages and the same benefits. Increasing diversity simply increases the variety of people within an organization. It does not mean that the culture has changed. It does not mean that these individuals will be able to reach their potential or enjoy a sense of belonging or authenticity or even be able to bring their best self to work. This is why even though you hear me say diversity and inclusion, D&I, a lot of organizations say I and D. They put the inclusion first because the argument is if you create inclusion, you get the diversity. Now that's a nice thought and a whole different show. But the point I want to make is that even though they're related, one does not necessarily lead to the other. The second issue that a generic business case for diversity creates for organizations is that they don't explore their own business case for diversity. Organizations buy into the generic business case for diversity based on research or popular sentiment. But when it comes to doing the work, it's often without due care to the particular circumstances of their organization. And this is one of the 3 biggest problems that organizations experience on their inclusion journey. And that's not having a business case for diversity for their specific organization. What this often means is that the strategies and the initiatives, they don't deliver the results that are required because of their cookie cutter approach. Have you ever tried wearing someone else's clothes? Or have you ever bought some clothes from a shop without trying them on, even though you knew it was the right size? And then you go home, you put it on a few days later when you're going out, and it doesn't fit. That's annoying, right? Well, imagine doing that for a business strategy where you've spent thousands or millions in your company and then the clothes don't fit. So how do you avoid that? Well, you buy clothes that fit, exploring a clear business case for diversity that's unique to your organization can be a competitive advantage. The third and final issue that I want to cover with you today is about how people think about the business case for diversity. It's often quite crude and basic. Often people want to know, how can diversity make us money? How does it affect the bottom line? Now, don't get me wrong, and you may have heard me say this before, but I'm a chartered accountant. I used to be an auditor, so I completely understand the bottom line and the need to contribute to the bottom line. I probably understand it more than you do because I was the person who you would have to answer to at month end. Once the numbers come in every month and they're not what you say they're going to be, I'm the person who wanted a response. I'm the person who asked you for a story. Those of you who are client facing, those of you who manage profit centers, you know what I'm talking about. Give me a narrative. Tell me a story. What else? We need to explain all of the variants. You've heard all of this before. You're probably hearing it now. The point I want to make is that there are other ways to contribute to a business. It's not all about new products or new services. You've got processes, you've got procedures, you've got operating practices that just aren't good enough. Rethinking and repurposing them can save you precious time and resources. These are a business case if you can get this to work. And let's be honest, the way that I'm describing it to you now is still pretty basic. But the point I want to make is that it's not all about the bottom line and that there's other ways that you should be thinking about this. So let's wrap this up. What are the key messages here? Relying on a generic business case for diversity is an inclusion mistake. Because 1, leaders assume diversity leads to inclusion, or vice versa. 2, leaders don't explore their own business case for diversity. And 3, leaders think of a business case for diversity in narrow terms. So what do you think? Are you relying on a generic business case for diversity? Get in touch or leave a message. I would love to hear from you. If you've learned something from today's show, you should sign up to our insider list on our website. It's free and you can stay ahead of the pack and get the best of everything that I produce. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.